The gates of Balmoral have witnessed generations of royal history, but few could have imagined a conflict like this. A senior royal reportedly standing against the son of another royal figure over a castle that carries the memory of a beloved queen has sparked enormous attention. This is not just another royal disagreement. At the centre of it all stands Balmoral Castle, a place many view as one of the most meaningful properties connected to the monarchy. Some places are far more than buildings. They are far more than stone walls, sprawling land, and historic rooms. They become symbols of memory, loss, tradition, and family legacy. Balmoral is one of those places. What is unfolding around it has generated intense discussion because it touches something deeper than status, wealth, or royal ceremony. It concerns a place that has held enormous personal significance for generations of the royal family. Take a moment to consider that. This is not being described as a dispute over titles, official roles, or seating arrangements at formal events. The focus is a location that has been treasured by the royal family for more than a century and a half. For many observers, Balmoral represents something almost sacred within royal life, which is why any controversy involving it immediately attracts attention. As one public exchange reflected, questions continue to be raised about public opinion and the future of the monarchy. Yet regardless of differing views, people remain fascinated by Balmoral and what it represents. To understand why emotions run so high whenever its name appears in headlines, it is important to understand what Balmoral truly means to the royal family. Not the polished version seen in official photographs every summer, not the carefully presented images released to the public. The deeper story lies in what the estate has meant to generations of royals who spent time there away from public scrutiny. For many of them, Balmoral was not simply a residence, it was a refuge. Located in the Scottish Highlands near the River Dee in Aberdeenshire, Balmoral stretches across roughly 53,000 acres of remarkable countryside. Ancient woodland, rolling hills, open moorland, and winding rivers create a landscape unlike almost anywhere else in Britain. The setting offers privacy on a scale that few places can match. The estate entered royal history in 1852 when Prince Albert purchased it for Queen Victoria. Albert believed the Scottish Highlands could provide his wife with something difficult to find within royal life: peace, privacy, and distance from constant public demands. Victoria quickly fell in love with the estate and famously referred to it as her dear paradise. From that point onward, Balmoral became deeply personal to the royal family. Unlike some royal properties associated with government functions, Balmoral developed a unique identity. It was not viewed simply as a symbol of the crown. It became a family retreat passed from one generation to the next. That distinction remains extremely important. Balmoral differs from properties such as Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle because it is privately owned royal property rather than part of the Crown estate. Through the years, it passed from Queen Victoria to King Edward VII, then through subsequent monarchs until reaching Queen Elizabeth II following the death of King George VI in 1952. For Queen Elizabeth, Balmoral became much more than a summer residence. It was her sanctuary for 7 decades. Year after year, she returned to the estate, walking its grounds, spending time outdoors, hosting family gatherings, and enjoying moments away from the pressures that came with being monarch. Prime ministers visited Balmoral. Family milestones unfolded there. Generations of grandchildren explored the hills and countryside surrounding the castle. The estate became woven into the personal history of the royal family in a way few other places ever could. It represented continuity, tradition, and a connection to the past. Its emotional significance grew even greater on September 8th, 2022, when Queen Elizabeth II passed away there. The news reverberated around the world. Millions mourned her loss, and Balmoral instantly became linked forever with the final chapter of her extraordinary life and reign. Because of that moment, many royal observers believe the estate now carries an even deeper symbolic weight. It is not merely a historic property, it is the place where Britain's longest-serving monarch spent her final hours. For those closest to her, that reality inevitably adds another layer of importance and sensitivity. Following the Queen's death, ownership of Balmoral transferred to the king as part of the inheritance of privately held royal property. Along with ownership came responsibility for overseeing the estate and determining how it would be used moving forward. Within royal circles, private estates have long operated according to traditions and expectations that are widely understood. The principle is straightforward. Permission is requested, permission is granted, and the property is treated with respect. These customs have existed for generations and have survived changes in monarchs, governments, and eras. The individuals may change, but the traditions surrounding the estates remain remarkably consistent. According to reports that later circulated, concerns emerged when questions were raised about activity at Balmoral that allegedly occurred without the expected approvals. Within royal circles, even the suggestion of such a situation was enough to generate considerable discussion. The estate is viewed as one of the most private and emotionally significant locations associated with the family. The matter reportedly attracted the attention of the princess, a royal figure often described as possessing a strong sense of duty and determination. Those familiar with her public reputation frequently point to her commitment to protecting royal traditions and institutions. Supporters argue that when she believes something important is at stake, she approaches it with remarkable resolve. According to the narrative that began spreading among royal commentators, she examined the situation carefully, considered its implications, and sought legal advice. Whether every detail of those reports is accurate remains a subject of debate, but the story quickly gained momentum because of the individuals involved and the symbolic importance of Balmoral itself. The palace, as often happens during sensitive royal matters, reportedly preferred that discussions remain private, yet the story continued attracting attention. Public fascination only intensified as questions emerged about what had allegedly occurred and who might have been responsible. At the center of the controversy was the Queen Consort's son, a figure known to the public for years. He was not simply recognized because of his family connections. He had built a public profile through writing, media appearances, and work within Britain's cultural and social circles. He was someone comfortable moving among influential people and high-profile environments. Observers who followed the developing story suggested that confidence may have played a role in how events unfolded. According to claims circulating among royal insiders and commentators, there was a belief that certain boundaries may not have been treated with the level of caution normally expected when dealing with a property as sensitive as Balmoral. The controversy reportedly began taking shape during the autumn of 2023. At that point, just over a year had passed since the death of Queen Elizabeth II. The estate remained deeply connected to memories of her life. Staff members who had worked alongside her for decades were still adapting to a dramatically different reality. Family members were continuing to navigate the transition into a new era of the monarchy. Within that atmosphere, Balmoral remained much more than a castle. It remained a symbol of continuity, remembrance, and royal heritage. Every decision involving the estate carried significance. Every visitor, every event, and every use of the property attracted heightened attention because the memory of the late Queen still lingered so strongly throughout the grounds she had cherished for most of her life. Even after her passing, Balmoral seemed to carry Queen Elizabeth's presence in every corner. Those who had known her best often described how certain places can hold memories so strongly that stepping inside feels different. In the months following her death, the estate remained wrapped in that atmosphere of remembrance and respect. It was during this sensitive period that controversy reportedly began to emerge. According to accounts that later circulated, the Queen Consort's son accessed Balmoral on more than one occasion without first obtaining the formal permissions normally expected for use of the private estate. The issue was not simply that he visited. The concern centered on the process, or lack of it, that surrounded those visits. Reports suggested that no formal authorization had been secured through the usual channels. No official request was said to have been submitted to estate administrators, and there was no indication that approval had come from those responsible for overseeing access to the property. Instead, he allegedly arrived and made use of the estate without following procedures that had long been understood within royal circles. What made the situation more serious, according to those discussing the matter, was that the visits were not described as brief appearances. Sources claimed that estate facilities were used over a period of time rather than during a single short stay. Areas connected to the castle, its grounds, and accommodations associated with authorized guests reportedly became part of the growing concern. Within the world surrounding the royal family, certain boundaries are rarely questioned. Many expectations are not written in large rulebooks because everyone involved already understands them. Balmoral occupies a particularly sensitive position among royal properties, making any alleged breach of established customs a matter that attracts attention very quickly. The controversy deepened when claims emerged that activities had taken place on the estate without authorization from those responsible for its management. According to reports, meetings were allegedly held and visitors were brought onto the grounds. Individuals who reportedly had no official connection to the royal household were said to have entered areas, usually subject to strict oversight. Whether viewed as a misunderstanding or something more serious, critics argued that extending invitations to others was not a decision he had authority to make. Supporters of established royal protocols pointed out that Balmoral is governed by procedures developed over many generations. The estate's private status means access is carefully monitored and records are maintained with considerable attention to detail. That attention to detail reportedly became crucial. Staff members familiar with the estate's normal routines allegedly noticed irregularities. At first, they appeared minor. Then, the pattern became harder to ignore. Rooms expected to remain unused showed signs of activity. Records contained entries that prompted questions. Staff reportedly encountered unfamiliar individuals they had not been informed would be present. Inside royal institutions, information often travels discreetly. Concerns are typically passed through established channels rather than discussed publicly. According to accounts that surfaced later, those concerns eventually reached the princess. At that time, Balmoral held a particularly important emotional status within the family. Following Queen Elizabeth's death, many regarded the estate not merely as inherited property, but as a living memorial to a monarch who had cherished it throughout her life. The understanding, according to royal commentators, was that the estate should be treated with exceptional care during the transition into a new reign. Reports suggested that the Queen Consort's son was familiar with that understanding. Having spent years around royal events and family gatherings, he was believed to appreciate the significance Balmoral carried for those closest to the late Queen. That belief made the allegations surrounding the estate even more controversial in the eyes of critics. As more details reportedly emerged, reactions inside royal circles were described as measured but serious. This was not presented as simple frustration over a procedural issue. For some, it became a question of respect for a place tied deeply to family history, personal memories, and generations of royal tradition. There were reportedly voices urging caution. Royal institutions have often preferred handling disputes privately, rather than allowing them to become public spectacles. Quiet conversations, behind-the-scenes negotiations, and discreet resolutions have historically been the preferred approach whenever possible. But according to the narrative that later developed, the princess reached a different conclusion. Supporters argued that there comes a point when silence is viewed as acceptance and when protecting an institution requires a visible response. If the reported accounts are accurate, she believed that point had been reached. That decision drew attention because of who she is. For decades, the princess has maintained a reputation for directness, consistency, and a strong sense of duty. Public trust in her has often stemmed less from royal titles and more from the perception that she approaches responsibilities with sincerity and determination. Born on August 15, 1950, as the second child of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, she grew up under extraordinary public scrutiny. Yet throughout her life, she developed a reputation distinct from many of her relatives. Admirers frequently describe her as practical, straightforward, and unwilling to engage in unnecessary theatrics. Those who have worked with her over the years often use similar descriptions. They speak of discipline, loyalty, and a willingness to confront difficult situations rather than avoid them. Whether one agrees with her decisions or not, few question her commitment once she has chosen a course of action. That reputation helps explain why her connection to Balmoral matters so much. For her, the estate is not simply another royal residence. It is tied directly to childhood memories, family experiences, and decades of personal history. Long before it became a symbol discussed in headlines, it was a place where she spent some of the most important years of her life. She learned outdoor skills there. She spent summers exploring the landscape with family members. She shared quiet moments with her parents away from the pressures of public life. Those experiences helped shape her understanding of family, duty, and tradition. Because of that history, Balmoral represents something deeply personal. It reflects memories of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip before they were viewed primarily as public figures. It recalls a family life that existed behind palace walls and beyond media attention. For the princess, those connections are not distant recollections. They remain vivid and significant. When information regarding the alleged unauthorized use of the estate reached her, reports suggest that she responded in the manner many have come to expect. There were no dramatic public displays, no emotional speeches. Instead, she reportedly gathered information, asked detailed questions, and worked to establish exactly what had happened before deciding how to proceed. Yet understanding her response also requires looking at a broader royal context. Relationships within large families are often complicated, and royal families are no exception. Long before this controversy emerged, observers had spent years analysing dynamics between senior figures within the monarchy. Those discussions became even more prominent after a familiar figure eventually assumed the role of Queen Consort. As a result, many royal watchers viewed the Balmoral controversy through a wider lens. They saw it not only as a dispute involving access to an estate, but also as part of longer-standing tensions and sensitivities that had existed within royal circles for years, and that larger backdrop would soon become impossible to ignore. What makes this situation even more complicated is that the story did not begin with Balmoral at all. The history between these two women stretches back decades, shaped by family events, public controversies, and changes inside the monarchy that played out in front of the entire world. The princess watched some of the most difficult moments of her brother's life unfold under relentless public attention. She witnessed the breakdown of his first marriage and the turmoil that followed. She saw how those events affected the people closest to him, including her mother, who carried enormous responsibilities while trying to keep the institution steady during a turbulent period. Over time, the woman who would eventually become Queen Consort moved from the edges of royal life into a central position within it. The princess accepted that reality. People close to royal affairs have often described her as practical and duty-focused. She understood that the monarchy needed stability and that some circumstances simply had to be accepted rather than endlessly fought against. But accepting a situation and embracing every consequence of it are not always the same thing. That distinction matters because the figure at the centre of the Balmoral controversy was never a working royal. He never held official duties, represented the crown, or carried the obligations that come with formal royal service. Instead, he occupied a unique position. He was close enough to royal life to move comfortably around it, yet far enough away to avoid its demands. According to reports and commentary surrounding the dispute, concerns emerged when that proximity was allegedly treated as authority. For the princess, supporters argue, the issue touched something much larger than one disputed incident. It involved principles she has spent a lifetime defending. Few members of the royal family have built a reputation as strongly tied to duty, consistency, and responsibility as she has. For decades, she has carried out engagements, represented organizations, and fulfilled commitments with little interest in publicity. While others often attract headlines, her public image has been built on reliability. She arrives, completes the work, and moves on to the next responsibility. Again and again, year after year, that commitment helps explain why reports surrounding Balmoral attracted so much attention. The princess has long been associated with the belief that rules apply equally to everyone. Privilege, in her view, comes with responsibility. Access comes with accountability. Expectations apply regardless of status. According to accounts that later circulated, a turning point came in early 2024 when she reportedly received a detailed briefing regarding activities connected to the estate. The information allegedly included questions about visits, authorization procedures, and access to areas subject to strict oversight. Rather than reacting immediately, she reportedly reviewed the information carefully. Those familiar with her public reputation often describe her as methodical. She is not known for dramatic reactions. Instead, she gathers facts, evaluates circumstances, and then makes decisions. The next step reportedly changed everything. Instead of relying solely on internal discussions, she sought legal advice. If accurate, that decision shifted the matter from a private family concern into something with potentially public consequences. For the royal household, that possibility alone was significant. Public disputes are uncomfortable. Family disputes are even more difficult. Legal disputes create an entirely different challenge because they move beyond palace conversations and into a setting where evidence and procedure become the focus. Reports suggest that some favoured a quieter resolution. Historically, royal institutions have often preferred discretion over confrontation. Private conversations, internal negotiations, and carefully managed solutions have usually been the preferred path. Yet, according to the narrative that developed, the princess believed a stronger response was necessary. Those who supported her stance argued that standards lose meaning if they are not enforced. In their view, protecting an institution sometimes requires difficult decisions rather than comfortable ones. As reports of potential legal action spread, public interest grew rapidly. Royal commentators debated what might happen next. Speculation intensified as more details emerged, and observers attempted to understand the broader significance of the dispute. The reported claim centered on unauthorized access and alleged violations of procedures governing a private royal estate. Questions focused on permission, authorization, and the use of property associated with one of the most significant locations in royal family history. Legal representation was reportedly secured, and arguments soon emerged regarding access and family connections. Some suggested that close ties to the royal family created certain expectations. Others argued that private property remains private property regardless of personal relationships. That distinction became one of the most discussed aspects of the controversy. Ownership, authorization, and established procedures remained at the center of the debate. Royal analysts repeatedly pointed to those questions as the real issue beneath the headlines. Throughout the controversy, attention also focused heavily on the Queen Consort. Her position placed her in a difficult situation. Publicly, she continued carrying out official responsibilities, but observers closely examined every appearance, statement, and interaction for signs of tension. The king faced a similarly delicate challenge. As monarch, husband, and brother, he occupied multiple roles simultaneously. Any public intervention risked creating new complications, which is why commentators paid close attention to what he did and did not say. As discussions moved closer to legal proceedings, interest only intensified. Courtrooms operate differently from royal institutions. Tradition, reputation, and status may shape public perception, but legal settings focus on documentation, evidence, and procedure. That reality is one reason the dispute generated such attention. Many observers believe the controversy represented more than a disagreement about access to a single property. They viewed it as a broader debate about authority, accountability, and boundaries within the modern monarchy. The timing made the issue even more significant. The royal family is navigating an important period of transition. Responsibilities continue shifting, leadership dynamics continue evolving, and questions about authority carry increasing importance. Within that context, controversies involving royal property naturally attract greater scrutiny. They raise larger questions about who has access, who makes decisions, and where the limits of influence truly exist. The individual at the center of the controversy was not a working royal and carried no formal responsibilities connected to the institution. Yet his proximity to royal life inevitably became part of the discussion. That proximity, many argued, should not be confused with authority. For supporters of the princess, that became the key message. Familiarity does not equal ownership. Family connections do not automatically create rights. Procedures exist for a reason, and those procedures apply regardless of personal relationships. That message extended beyond the immediate parties involved. It reached advisors, extended family members, and everyone connected to royal life in one way or another. The broader implication was clear. Boundaries remain boundaries, no matter who is standing on either side of them. For the Queen Consort, the situation carried unavoidable personal implications. Public discussion often focused on legal details, but underneath those discussions was a complicated family matter involving relationships built over many years. That reality added another layer of sensitivity to an already difficult situation. For the heir to the throne, many observers saw the controversy as a reminder that institutions survive through consistency. Rules only matter when they are applied. Standards only matter when they are enforced. Accountability only matters when it extends to everyone. Supporters believe the princess viewed the issue through exactly that lens. Whether her reported approach was praised or criticized, few doubted the seriousness with which she approached questions involving duty and responsibility. And through all of it, Balmoral remained unchanged. The castle still stands among the Highland landscape that has shaped generations of royal memories. The grounds remain connected to family traditions, private moments, and decades of history. It is still remembered as a place where Queen Elizabeth spent treasured time with family, still a place associated with some of the most personal chapters of her life, still a place carrying enormous symbolic importance within the royal story. The debates, legal questions, and public attention may come and go, but Balmoral remains what it has always been. What may have changed is the determination surrounding how its boundaries would be protected moving forward. The princess ensured that the discussion would not quietly disappear. Whether viewed as controversial, necessary, or somewhere in between, the reported actions associated with the dispute created a lasting conversation about access, privilege, and responsibility within royal life. And if there is one lesson many observers believe emerged from the controversy, it is this: the next person who assumes that family connections automatically grant permission may think twice before crossing those gates, knowing full well what consequences could be waiting on the other side.